Hey everyone, it's Ben Hardy here, and in today's video we're doing a comparison between the new 2023 Nissan 400Z and the Toyota Supra. Before we get into the video, I do need to mention that my car buying guide is available right now. Link in the description down below if you want to save time and money the next time you go to purchase a car. Let's get into the comparison. Let's start things under the hood of the 400Z. So we have a twin turbo 3-liter V6 that goes through either a 9-speed automatic or a 6-speed manual. It's good for 400 horsepower and then 350 pound-feet of torque. And let me say that again, 6-speed manual. That is very important. I love the bracing there across, and then I love how it says twin turbo so that everyone knows that it is turbocharged. And yeah, that's under the hood of the Z. Popping over here to the Supra, it's got the double pull for the hood. We have a turbocharged 3-liter inline 6 that goes through an 8-speed automatic transmission, no manual. It's good for 382 horsepower and 368 pound-feet of torque. So you guys can see the Supra has a little bit more torque, but the Z has more horsepower. So it'll be interesting to see kind of the difference in the driving dynamics with both of the cars, given the little power differences. But popping back over to the Z, you guys can see stylistically with the car, it's got kind of like this retro appearance. I love the thing there in the center of the hood. It's kind of like a little Y. Definitely just accents it very nicely. You guys can see here with the LED accent lights and then the projector bulbs for the headlights themselves. And then notice the Nissan logo. It's Nissan's new logo with the white trim on it. And then you can see the accenting down below. And notice with the Z, there's not a lot of, there's the venting for the grille, but there's not a ton of venting there on the side or anything. Like it's all body work, right? So that's kind of like a key thing with the new Z, where they've just kind of made sure to keep it clean from an aesthetic perspective. And overall, I think it looks great from a front-end perspective. But again, it has that more retro, kind of more like flat, almost like boxy type design from a front-end perspective. Now, popping over the Supra, we got quite a bit more happening here with the car. So you guys can see we've got a really large hood, just like what you have on the Z. But notice we got the fake venting there on the side. And then you guys can see the LED accent lights with the projector bulbs. Definitely super distinctive, especially at night when you see this. And then you can see there just off to the side with the light, you've got some fake venting, right? And then you've got more right there in the grille. It's all closed off with the sensor pretty much. And it's kind of like a hallmark of the new Supra. Toyota logo there on the front end. But yeah, I think it's still a good looking car, but you definitely have a lot more happening. It's a lot busier. Popping here to the side of the Z, I think they kept things pretty simple, right? So notice how you've got a kind of like darker coloration on the wheels. And then you can see here with the brake calipers just finished in red, which accents the blue very nicely, pops out. And again, it's just simple, right? With the design of the wheel and with the coloration they've done. They don't have like a bunch of crazy colors happening or anything like that. And notice the bodywork also, like around the wheel well, for example, the fender area. Again, you've got like just one body line pretty much around that. And you've got like one coming off from the light. And then you can see here with the side skirt. And just notice that most of it's just pretty rounded off, and there's not a ton of lines or shapes happening. It's just like this nice smooth thing happening on the side of the car, which I think looks great. Again, I love that's one of the things I love about the new Z is just the simplicity of the design on the car. And then notice the mirrors are blacked out, and then you guys can see also with the roof, that's also been blacked out. So that two-tone contrast I think looks great on the car, and it kind of just makes it look a little bit more sleek. And then you guys can see the silver that kind of dissects it. And the door handles are very interesting on the Z. Also, massive gas cap. I don't know what it is, and you guys will see on the Supra too, massive gas cap. I don't know why they do that, but they just they do that. Now, popping back over here to the Supra, you guys can see with the wheels, a little bit more happening, right? So you still have the red brake caliper, but you can see you've got the silver and the black with the wheels. And if you guys are also wondering, from a tire width perspective, they're going to be very similar. But notice again, more fake venting in there on the side. And you can see like a matte finish on the mirror. And then you can see also here with, just tons of different accent pieces, a lot of different body lines, massive gas cap. Again, it's like huge. They're like, you know what, this segment of car, you got to have a massive gas cap to work out. But yeah, tons happening on the side of the Supra, which it's just busy. It doesn't look bad, but it's busy. Now, popping here into the cargo area of the Z, you guys can see it's actually a hatch, which is pretty cool. But storage space, I mean, it's supposed to be a sports car. It's pretty good. It's not massive, but it's solid for the segment. And you guys can see the loading floor. And if you guys are wondering in terms of dimensions, if you have the ability to just go and sit in a 370Z and look at the cargo space of a 370Z, it's going to be like identical to this new 400Z, or they're now just calling it the Nissan Z, right? If you guys are wondering from space perspective. And then finishing things up with the rest of the rear. Love the retro taillights. Again, another cool aesthetic piece of it. And then you guys can see how it's all blacked out there throughout the center. And then you guys can see how we've got the new Nissan logo again with the Z logo off to the side. And notice here with the diffuser area, again, all blacked out. And then you can see here with the exhaust tips, really cool design. Again, everything's kind of like retro on this car. Whereas the Supra, they went super modern on it, or I should say they went Supra modern on it. And then you can see here with the spoiler at the top, body painted. Again, it doesn't pop out too much, but it would be cool if it was like flush with the bodywork instead of like being its own separate piece, but that's just my personal opinion. And then popping back over to the Supra, you guys can see again here with the rear end of the car, lots happening. So you've got what's called the double bubble roof, super similar to like what the Dodge Viper has. It's kind of a cool aesthetic piece. And the Nissan ZX has similar kind of design. You guys can see with the taillights, really cool aesthetic. Got the Super badge, got the GR badge down below. And then you can see with the badge how it just looks kind of popped on a little bit. I love the reverse light, how it looks like a rain light. And then you can see the exhaust tips. You guys heard the exhaust earlier. The Supra definitely sounds better. With the pops and crackles and all that fun stuff. And notice with the diffuser how it's kind of looks like it's more like plopped on, which I don't think is bad necessarily because it pops out more aesthetically, but you just have to be okay with that. And then you can see here with the key fob on the car. If you guys are wondering why the Nissan didn't have a key fob with that one was a prototype, and so it had some interesting stuff to deal with it. But it's just going to have Nissan's regular key fob if you guys are wondering what it's going to look like. But you can see storage space here, again, pretty similar in terms of the size and the depth and all that. I do think that this, if you guys are wondering, if you guys haven't had a chance to see a Supra, this is super similar to like a Porsche Cayman in terms of the space there in the back. Very similar. You got the cargo cover there as well. And yeah, let's pop back to the Z. Popping to the interior here with the Z definitely pops with this particular car. So we've got the blue interior. You guys can see the door handle right there. And there's a vent right next to it. I always thought that was kind of interesting. And then you can see how the door handle inside and outside kind of matches. But yeah, I love the contrast with the blue leather and the Alcantara. I think that looks great from an aesthetic perspective. And you guys will notice a lot of just regular Nissan switchgear in this car. A lot of stuff transfers. Notice with the seats, it's manual for the adjustments on them, for part of the adjustments, and then you've got the other adjustments there on the side of the seat, which are not, so it's kind of a mix. It's interesting that Nissan puts it in the interior of the seat. I just thought it was weird. I love the look of the seats, though. Definitely a huge plus with the Z is the seats just look fantastic from an aesthetic perspective, and they're very comfortable as well. Now, it's got the 3-pedal layout because it's got a manual, right? So that's another big plus with the Z. You got the stability control there off to the side. And popping from that over to the Supra, you can see you've got a pretty normal door handle, so it's not crazy trick like what you have with the Z. And I think I remember this was the door handle that sometimes would just randomly lock or unlock, whatever it decided. Now, this is my personal opinion. I don't think this looks as cool aesthetically. There's not a lot of color happening, right? It's just all blacked out. But, you know, material use is pretty similar between both the cars in terms of the quality, except the door handle does definitely look higher quality than the Z's. But aesthetically, this doesn't look as pleasing to the eye. And then same thing with the seats. The seats are comfortable. They're relatively nice looking, but I think the Z seats, just imagine them in black if you hate the bright blue. I think that they just look a little bit better. I know it's got the memory function there on the side. And if you guys are wondering, this is like BMW's cheaper like leather stuff. I don't think it's real leather that they have in the Supra. That's basically just all they put in. And then again, just 2 pedals because you can only get the Supra in an automatic. And then it's the double release for the hood latch. Another thing that I actually really like about the Supra, all the light controls, and you guys will see a bunch of BMW switchgear once we fully pop the interior. But popping back over to the Z, you guys can see here, notice with the steering wheel, and something I want to mention is the steering is electronically assisted with the new Z. So you've got the Z logo there in the center, and then you can see here with all the practical controls there, like for volume and stuff like that, normal car stuff that you're going to have. And I do want to mention that I distinctly remember when I turned the wheel in the Z, it was very, very light. What they've done with the electronic assistance, like that's something that does worry me slightly. I haven't driven one yet, so I can't fully comment, but I am worried that the steering's going to feel a little bit numb, but it's, like you guys can see, super light with the feel. So it'll be interesting to see what it's like when it's actually moving, but I can't put too much judgment because, again, this car was a prototype. And then you can see here with the gauge cluster setup, really cool, full digital gauge cluster, looks absolutely fantastic with the animations. I think that Nissan killed it with what they've done from a stylistic perspective here in the gauge cluster. I love how you can see like the G-forces and all that. And then RPMs front and center. That's super important. Again, it's a manual transmission. And so, yeah, I definitely am a huge fan of that gauge cluster. Here at the top, we have the little analog performance gauges is what I will call them. You guys remember from my like Ford Mustang reviews, they have like the same thing where they have a bunch of gauges there at the top of the dash. I think it's kind of a cool thing, and it's kind of an homage to like race cars and stuff. And so, yeah, another nice thing that Nissan's added here to the new Z. And then you guys can see here with the hazard lights, the vents and all that. It's pretty easy to use, nothing too crazy happening there. Now, as for the infotainment system, it's Nissan's, most modern infotainment system. It's not the biggest version, but it's like they're more modern. You can see camera quality. Now, don't judge this too harshly because this was in a very poor lit garage, and so it's not, I guess, not accurate to what you're going to see out in the real world. And again, it's got to remember it's a prototype car. But as for the infotainment system, response time on the screen is great. It's self-explanatory. I've had several Nissans for a week, and I don't have any complaints about their infotainment system. I think it works fantastically. You got the analog controls down below with the infotainment system, like navigation, for example. And the response time on those buttons is also really solid. So they've just done a good job from an infotainment system perspective. So you won't hate it, is the best way to put it. You'll actually really like it. Now, climate controls just down below. It is a smaller car, so it just has a single zone climate. And then see like the charging area right here. And I believe that is for like the auto rev match. I might be wrong, but I'm pretty sure that's for the auto rev match. And then again, manual transmission, that's a huge thing. And the shifter, again, I distinctly remember very notchy in terms of what it felt like going into the gears. And it makes me super excited for the car because it has one of the better feeling manual transmissions that I've driven, or not driven, but felt, basically. We'll see what it drives like also. That and the steering, we'll see exactly what that's like in the very near future, hopefully. But yeah, I think they nailed it with the shifter. And also the look and the feel, really good with the 400Z. And so, and like I said, just the fact that it has a manual is so important. Heated seats, just popped right out of the 370. Got a little cup holder right there. And you can see the center console setup, which nothing too crazy happening there. And you got the regular little brake off to the side. And then notice the padding right there. And then you guys can see here again with the seats. And then notice the blue continues on the dash. I think that's such a cool thing that they did there. And then with the glove box, pretty normal. And then notice here with the vents. And then up top, again, you got that double bubble design for the roof, which helps out with headroom. And it looks cool aesthetically from an exterior perspective. So definitely a fan of that. And also a black headliner, so it matches like the rest of the theme. They didn't do like a cream colored headliner or anything, so it makes the car just feel sportier. It does make the interior a little bit darker, but I'm okay with that to have the sportier feel within the car. And now popping back over to the Supra, you guys can see the little stop start button right there. And cool little digital gauge cluster, right? Kind of a lot of BMW stuff happening, but we'll get into that. So first off with the steering wheel. basically a BMW steering wheel with a Toyota logo over the airbag cover, even the paddle shifters, all that. So if you guys like BMW, then you will like the Supra with the feel of the steering wheel. And it does have a bunch of practical stuff like adaptive cruise control and all that fun stuff, phone controls, everything. So it's got all the normal, practical, modern safety tech. And that, I guess that's one of the benefits, is BMW has a lot of that stuff, and so they're able to just throw that, transfer that basically over into the Supra. So that's another benefit of the partnership, right? The paddles, the only thing that does annoy me about them is they're plasticky on the back. So you can see they look nice in the front, but the back is just all plastic, so that part doesn't feel great. Now, as for the gauge cluster, I think it still looks great. RPMs front and center. The animation with them is really cool. And then you guys can see like the temperature. I love how they've got like the bars for the temperature and the fuel. I think that's another cool part of the car. Now, I guess it is a little bit annoying with the fuel sometimes, because I remember when I actually owned the car, it was like, because it would just be like, oh, I have this much, and then just bar gone. And then you're like, oh, it's not as like precise, I guess, is the best way to put it. But yeah, it's cool when you go into like the sport mode, how it makes it a little bit more aggressive with the gauge cluster, and the animation as you're like revving it up looks really cool as well. So I think they did a good job with the gauge cluster. I can't really say if I prefer one over the other. I think they both look great, but I will say I'm impressed that with Nissan's, just like how cool that one looks. Now, infotainment system. Response time's great. Again, it's not BMW's newest unit, but it's a newer unit, and I don't have any complaints about it. Other than wireless Apple CarPlay, that system is like any car that I've been in that has it, and this Supra has it, just glitches out all the time. So yeah, and then you guys can see backup camera resolution's great. You got parking sensors, all that. I will say the backup camera resolution on this is a little bit better than what I saw with the Z, but I can't judge the Z fully until I see like a full production backup camera, basically. But this, no problem at all. So it's great from a camera perspective. And then you guys can see here with the rest of the infotainment system. Also, if you're running that little like waving with the light, that's just because the frame rate of the camera compared to the frame rate of the infotainment system. And also, you guys can see the fuel economy, 16.6 miles per gallon is what I was averaging, because I was having fun with the car. Bunch of analog controls down below, and you can just hover your finger over the presets. That's another cool thing of having BMW's UI, right, is that you have some cool little features like that. So you just like hover your finger over the presets, and it just goes to them with the infotainment system. And then notice the vents down below. I think they did a good job with the styling of them, but again, it's just a BMW interior. So if you like BMW like this, you've got the analog controls for the climate system, and it does have a dual zone climate system. Doesn't really need it because it's a small car, but it's nice that it has it. And then it also has the heated seat controls off to the side. And then you guys can see the little person, like the animation, where you can change the fan speed. This was something that I was annoyed with when I had the car, because it was like you had to press the button a bunch of times to get the fan to direct exactly where you wanted it to be. And then you can see wireless phone charger, which held your phone in sometimes, not all the time. That's the problem with a lot of car makers with wireless phone chargers, is they don't make it so they set up so it holds it. Like the one that I like the most is probably like the Cadillac Escalade. That one actually held it in place. You can see here with the shifter for the 8-speed automatic. I can't comment on the Z's transmission in terms of response time, but I can say that this 8-speed automatic, super smooth, super quick with the shifts. You can see the analog control for the infotainment system off to the side. But I do want to do a quick stint on the transmission. With the Z, it's getting the 9-speed, which in other Nissans that I've driven has been very responsive, so I think it's going to be just as good as this 8-speed. And then, again, the manual is going to be king, and so maybe we'll have a Supra manual to compete with the Z. Time will tell on that. Down below, you guys can see here with the controls there for like some of the safety systems and everything, traction control, all that fun stuff. If you currently own a Supra or whatever, hold down the traction control button for like 10 seconds, turns everything off, and that is the best way to drive the car, so that it doesn't cut power. And it's it's a little bit nerve-wracking sometimes, but it's a fun driving experience. And the sport mode opens up the valves so that you get kind of a louder sound. And then notice all the carbon fiber around that whole section. You guys can see a couple of cup holders right there. And the Supra doesn't have a center console. That was another thing I remembered. Oh, it has like that little thing, but it doesn't have like a true center console, whereas the Z does, just saying. But yeah, it's that was something that, again, as an owner, it was kind of annoying. It at least can like fit your wallet or something, but it's also not covered, which is kind of annoying. But yeah, I don't know why that was a thing. You can see glove box, pretty practical, but stuff with like the owner's manual, all that kind of normal stuff. And then you can see here with the trim at the dash that connects to the vents, I think, again, looks good aesthetically, so I think they've nailed it from that perspective. Then here with the headliner, you got the double bubble design, which helps out with headroom, so tall people can actually fit inside of the car. And again, they've gone for a black headliner so that it has that sportier theme there at the top. Now, we don't have pricing on the Z yet, but you guys can see the window sticker on the Supra. So you guys will see the total MSRP in a second. But my guess is that I think the Z is going to start around $40,000 roughly. And then I think fully loaded, it's probably going to be like $50,000. And so I think it's going to be a much better like value compared to the Supra from a price point perspective, because you guys will see with the total price on this, I think it's like $56,000 for the MSRP for a loaded up Supra with the automatic transmission, which I'm not saying it's overpriced, but I think the Z is just going to be cheaper than this. And so fully summing things up and doing like a little walk around here on the Z, last thing, basically the Supra, right, sounds amazing, looks pretty cool, but only has an automatic. And if you like a BMW, you're going to love the Supra. It drives a little bit different than BMWs. It has like a sportier, lighter feel to it. Whereas the Z, I think, is going to be a more analog feeling car. It's going to be a little bit more thrilling to drive. Again, manual transmission. And so my personal pick after this comparison, even though I haven't driven the Z yet, is going to be the Z. I'll let you guys know if I change my mind after driving the Z, but I think I'm only going to like it even more after driving it.